This episode is brought to you by Fuli Gemstones.
I do think jewellery is important. I mean, it's obviously, it's such an ancient form of art, and it's a very important form of art. It's back to the ancient Egyptians and even beyond. It's endlessly fascinating.
I'm Carol Woolton, the voice of jewellery. Welcome to If Jewels Could Talk. I'm an author and broadcaster, and the woman who initiated the role of jewellery editor at magazines like Tatler and Vogue. This is a podcast for everyone, for people who do like jewellery, for people who don't realise they like jewellery, and anyone intrigued by fascinating facts, new ideas and forgotten histories. So join me as I tell sparkly tales and meet all sorts of people, delving into 4 centuries of jewellery culture and investigate what's happening now. Today I am welcoming the English musician whose new album Sleep will be released a bit later in the year, end of November, with a video by photographer and director Nick Knight of Show Studio. Her career has basically ricocheted between music, fashion, art and jewellery. She's modelled for Karl Lagerfeld, Philip Tracy, produced and appeared in Oscar-nominated films, and is a global style icon. She's one of the best-dressed women in the world. She's been described by the New York Times as a performance artist for her experimentation with fashion and jewellery. Welcome, Daphne Guinness.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I can't see your famous two-tone swept-up hair today because you...
Well, it's under my hat. Yeah, you can see it now.
Now I can see it. And usually she's exotic, ruffled, feathered, plumed, in costumes, layered in pearls, antique diamonds and jewel-encrusted armour-style finger rings, which I can see you have on today. Are those Laurie Rodkin?
No, they're not. They're me, actually.
They're you. You designed them.
Yes. I actually started quite a long time ago. Although I do have some Laurie Rodkin ones. I just the problem is with other people's jewellery is that they're slightly uncomfortable. So when I was a teenager, I would make them out of silver. And I had lots of motorcycle rings and I would customise them myself and sort of paint them or whatever. This has been a fairly long project of mine since my early teens.
So are those made in gold, those ones?
These are white gold with diamonds.
These are white gold, and you've got them on 3 or 4 fingers?
3 fingers, but I've got quite a lot of other ones. So it just depends. And sometimes what I do is if I've got a sort of some of these, and also when I made the glove with Sean Lean, what I did was sort of take some of the diamonds out of things that I didn't like very much, and I incorporate them into a new thing that I'm making to sort of recycle. Modern jewellery, 99% I don't really like. I normally have to reset something.
And do you ever wear costume?
Oh, the whole time.
So you'll mix it with antique and costume?
Yeah, absolutely.
Old costume?
Old costume, new costume, stuff from all over the place. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be shiny, but it has to be the right kind of shine. So I'm very, very picky about colours and about the hue of, say, if it's not a real diamond. Believe me, I spend hours and hours and hours just making sure things are kind of right.
What's the right kind of shine?
Oh gosh, I'd have to show you for real. If you're getting costume jewellery, it'll sort of sometimes it'll have a strange sort of pink or blue kind of tinge to it. The right kind is a sort of very pure light that comes through it. And I don't even mean real diamonds. I mean the plastic kinds or any kind of stones. For me, it's trying to find what resonates with my sort of colour scheme. It must sound rather mad, but it means a lot.
It sounds like a perfectionist to me.
Yeah, I think it is. Oh gosh, no, there's some really beautiful, very inexpensive paste, and there's some absolutely hideously and everything in between. So it is, going through different warehouses or downtown LA or in New York or in London or whatever. It's sort of, you have to wade through a lot of crap in order to get a good thing.
So it's a lot of foraging around.
A lot of foraging.
You have to do that yourself.
You do. You do, because I mean, you can trust people to a certain extent, but then I like to be involved.
And do you have favourite places that you might go?
Depends on whether it's a real or not real, and what I can afford, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if I could afford real everything, I'd have real everything. But again, you know, sometimes it's just quite nice to have something that you can just throw on and you don't have to worry about it being, you know, too real. And I like the mix of real and not real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody assumes it's all real, but it's a real mixture.
And is there any little haunt that you get your costume from?
A lot of them are shut. I used to. I mean, before I got 14 years ago, for example, I mean, when I was installing FIT, I was still designing. I do still design now, but as I sort of fell more and more deeply into the music, that took up most of my time. You know, my attention was diverted. So I didn't really have time to do it. So, you know, sometimes I'll try and find places that I used to go to, you know, 15 years ago, and they're just not there.
They're shut. It's such a shame, isn't it?
It is a shame.
And Butler and Wilson, did you ever go to Birmingham?
Yes, I loved Butler.
Yeah.
Is that still there?
It's still there. He's still in the Fulham Road.
Yeah.
It's all the detail in the costume,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? You have to have that detail.
Exactly. And Old Paste is terrific. But it's again, that has become very, very expensive.
It's exorbitant, isn't it?
Yeah. And obviously I love S.J. Phillips, and I love looking through auction pieces. I mean, the best place to buy real jewellery, and the least expensive way, is to go through the auction books.
You're completely right.
Because you're not getting the markup. Because if you go to a shop, it's always a lot more expensive.
And there's only one piece, so there may be another buyer against you. But if there isn't, it's your lucky day.
Yeah, it is your lucky day.
And Daphne, in the video that you've done with Nick Knight, there's so much jewellery in the opening scene. Was that really important?
Yes, I did sort of go and get out things that I hadn't worn for a very long time. So I found some of my old rings, so I layered those on. I had some silver mittens that have got sort of diamante kind of encrusted silver mittens, and then there's a pair of Pauline Trigère cuffs, which are unbelievably beautiful. So that's all very, very jewelled, encrusted hand.
But I want to talk about your style because it's just so iconic, and you're known for these vertiginous sky-high heelless shoes and the two-tone hair and the ruffles and plumes, as I said. Now, how did that come about? What's the origin of your look?
A series of mistakes, which is, I think all the best things come from mistakes. I suppose the two-tone hair started probably about 25 years ago, but it was sort of, in a way, it was sort of red underneath, then it became purple underneath, then it became sort of more blonde with a black streak in it. But then there was a Italian Vogue cover shoot with Stephen Meisel where I was asked to do it, and they asked me the day before the shoot. I was told to go to the hairdresser, and they cut my hair off and dyed it black. So that was quite a sort of shocking experience. I didn't really know how to sort of say no, or I just thought, okay, fine, I'm sure it'll grow back, but not a bit of it. But also the other problem with that was I was told that I had to have it put back to my real colour immediately because they wanted to reshoot the cover because the editor didn't like my hair being black and short. Oh my goodness. So the way that, the present incarnation is it growing back from that, from being cut off, and then I sort of slowly had to grow it back, and to get it back to what it was previously from that shoot was very, very difficult. But it wasn't an intentional thing. But I know a lot of the things that happened to my hair is me with a sort of thinking, okay, fine, but in the early 2000s, I'm going to try this dye out on my hair. What's it going to look like? So it's a sort of an art project.
Experimentation.
And
the heels, I guess those came from Alexander McQueen, your great friend.
Funnily enough, that's another interesting story. Obviously, he loved the heels, but they came about more that I was in Hawaii with my friend David LaChapelle, and I was doing a month, probably there for about a month, and we were shooting most days, and I was sort of, a background person or sort of helping out or in the picture or not in the picture, but essentially sort of part of the circus. And you're climbing up really sort of steep mountains in the jungle. And I was wearing a pair of Christian Louboutin shoes, which the heel fell off. So I got some putty and sort of made a kind of heelless thing that I managed to continue doing the shoot in. And then I discovered that Natasha in London, she made similar things to what I was trying to. I'm not a shoemaker. I mean, I can sort of cobble something together quickly if I have to, but I'm not a professional shoemaker. But then I saw that she did something similar. So that my first kind of actual ones were from there, and then I just continued sort of refining it via different cobblers, and they've become an extension of my feet because I'm pretty double jointed.
And comfortable? Very
comfortable. My whole ethic is to be as comfortable as possible. I mean, obviously the stilts that I collaborate with my friend Noritaka in Japan, those are you can't bend backwards, but the shoes that I'm wearing them now, they're not actually that high and I can lean backwards. I get a backache if I don't wear them because I can sort of fold down and stretch my back out with these. And even when I used to wear heels in the past, I used to snap them off because I'm always sort of leaning backwards. I feel like a sort of one-trick pony in my shoes, but, you know, it gives me height and I can walk across inhospitable terrain.
Well, I can confirm to any listeners that you are committed to your look.
I know.
Because you don't know this, but I was on a flight to New York quite a long time ago. I was on my way to do a shoot for Vogue in New York. You were on the same flight and you were walking down the aisle and I thought, I wonder if she's got flat shoes on for the flight. And I peeked out and you didn't.
Oh my God.
And you were in your usual shoes. And I thought, God, that shows commitment.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yes, I am committed to it. But also I really what I don't like is the idea of spending a lot of money on a pair of shoes and then getting a blister. So I want maximum comfort. The next stage of my shoe reinvention will be to make them extremely comfortable on the inside.
What, they're quite hard leather, are they?
No, I know my ones are really comfortable, but for the sort of, but for everybody else.
Okay.
Because what I have observed is that when you have children, or when I was a child, you have your feet measured, so the width and the length. When you become sort of 18, you no longer have your feet measured. You're sort of put into a standard. Well, I'm a 37. It is, but I could be a 38 or a 36 because they don't really make sort of width or length, and the idea of having to sort of, you know, spend hundreds of pounds on a pair of shoes, then you end up having to buy lots of plasters. That's why I make my shoes.
So tell me, when you're getting dressed and you're kind of putting your look together for the day, is it the clothes, the shoes? Where did the jewels come in your thought process?
At the end.
Mm-hmm.
Before I put on my shoes, but after I've put on my clothes, and I'll figure out which sleeve or which hand or which part of the neck or ear that I'm going to sort of encrust or not.
And what makes you decide to encrust or not? Is it what you're doing?
It's a feeling.
So it doesn't matter where you're going?
No, it doesn't. I take sort of one look in the mirror and then I think, should I put something? And then it's an intuition rather than anything else.
So it'll just feel right that you do that. And do you just look through your jewellery and think, okay, it's that one today? Or do you do them in rota? Do you have a feeling about your jewels that they need outings with you sometimes?
I used to. I mean, as I said, I've been fairly busy making music, so I haven't been going out very much I haven't been terribly social. So I haven't really been living anywhere. This is the first time I've been in one place for more than... I've moved continents and house 13 times in as many years. So everything's been slightly in storage, and plus plus working on all the albums, it's been very difficult to see everything. But I imagine I should do a sort of rota to give them all outings again. I'm just starting with the clothes.
If they're all in storage, did you just have your favourite pieces with you?
I did.
And what are those? Can you share what those are?
Well, my rings and an earring, a couple of brooches and a bracelet. And that's pretty much, it was a very sort of a kind of core unit that didn't take up too much space.
Antique brooches.
Antique brooches, yes. And quite a lot of paste.
Because another time that I actually did meet you was quite some time ago in Mustique, where we had lunch at someone's house, and you disappeared for a while, and you came back in a black swimsuit with a big diamond brooch. So that's the beachwear. That's the beachwear.
I think diamond brooches on beachwear look really, really, really great.
It did. It looked great.
I used to swim in jewellery, but that really is probably not a good idea because it can fall off. And I'm quite an enthusiast. I go for very, very long swims, and so when you're way out in the middle of the sea, it's not a terribly good idea to be wearing a brooch.
Could plummet to the bottom.
Could plummet to the bottom.
So it's the mishmash of styles that's important to you.
Yeah.
I guess also to always be surprising. I liked somewhere where the late journalist Adrian Gill said, Daphne's never had a look, never once, never remotely, that was anyone's but her very own.
Oh, Adrian, I miss him.
I know. Isn't that lovely?
That is lovely.
Because it is sort of very surprising what you do and how you put it together, but you don't seem to be aware of that.
I'm completely unaware of it. I do realise that I've become a kind of thing, but it wasn't by any design of my own in a funny way. It was just life.
But are you aware that it's an art that other people can't do?
I've been told it, as I always think I look an utter wreck. And I'm not being modest. I'm probably, as you said, perfectionist.
Was there anything that you think inspired you? When you were growing up, you had a very unconventional upbringing, quite very posh upbringing, part of the Guinness brewing dynasty and the Mitford family, the English aristocrats. You lived quite near the home of Salvador Dali. I mean, did any of that, do you think, form this sort of sense of individualism and being avant-garde?
I think totally. It was a very strange, not very strange, but strange to other people. But the way I grew up was so many different types of scenery, but the house that I was in probably the most was in Spain. So my bedroom was in the chapel behind the altar, just where I like it, on a sort of lovely rusty bed with a kind of small mattress with a window with bars on it looking onto a sort of granite cliff. And that was where that's where I learnt how to sing, and that's where I grew up in the summer. And indeed it was the mountain overlooks the Bay of Cadaqués, and Salvador Dali, who was my mother's great friend, she bought the house. Well, she grew up in between Paris and Cadaqués and became a very, very close friend of Dali's, and he convinced her to buy the house up on the hill. But it's extremely difficult to get to, dirt road all the way up on the top, and it's a small ermita. Now there's more water, but at the time, no electricity, no water, sort of, living in a chapel. And with, not just Dali, but so many other artists and all the people that, would flock to be around. I mean, because it wasn't just Dali who lived there. It was Man Ray, and it was Marcel Duchamp, and it was the whole sort of end of the sort of, between the 20s and the early 80s when Dali died, it was all artists, because it's difficult to get to, and it's not Saint-Tropez, so you can't anchor a huge yacht in the bay, and it would be where all the artists would go in order to sort of get away from their dealers, or to be able to get some sort of peace of mind, to be able to sort of, when they go back to New York or Paris or whatever, to be able to think. Extremely rough and terrific. But as I didn't realise that not everybody had lunch at 7 o'clock in the evening, so and not everybody dressed in everything, anything they wanted. So it was hugely confusing for me to be coming back to sort of London or any kind of traditional idea of being, a child. I had absolutely, to me, life was art and or literature or the wilderness on the top of the hill. And when you read books and you don't have very many toys and you're left to your own devices, that's your imagination takes you away. And I suppose I never stopped being that child.
Do you remember any jewellery experience did your mother wear jewellery?
No, she wore very little jewellery, strangely enough. She didn't wear jewellery. I mean, if she went out to a party, but it's going to sound very strange, but I didn't see a lot of my mother apart from in the summer when of course in a place like Cadaqués people didn't wear jewellery. It was much more sort of scarves and sort of very relaxed but flamboyant,
like beads, hippie beads, or things like that.
Yeah, the hippie contingent had their hippie beads, and then the Spanish would have their sort of style, and then you'd have the French and the Americans with their style, and then it was quite a scene, actually.
And was Salvador Dali working on any of his surrealist pieces at the time? He made quite a lot of.
He did. I knew him quite well as a child. He was extremely civilized and a lovely person, and he rescued me from, as they say in French, tristesse. When I remember, for example, I would be crying in the cafe, sort of, why is my mother going to cook the snails? And he put me up to all sorts of tricks to sort of get the snails out of the kitchen, because he was a great believer in mollusks, although he'd like to eat them a lot. But I mean, I think he felt for me, because I was forever rescuing ants or snails or lobsters. But and to get to the point, in his house, went there one day and sort of seeing these lobsters sort of half dead in his pool because they'd put chlorine in, and it really was. It looked like a sort of terrible crime scene for lobsters. Anyway, but that was life. That was just how things were, and it wasn't. One didn't. I wish. Well, looking back on it, I know how sort of amazing it was, but these sort of great moments of one's life, I had a similar experience with McQueen. You think it's going to go on forever, just being like that, but all things come to an end in a funny way. I mean, Cadaqués is still there, and I still go, but it's different. The world is a different place.
Is the chapel still there where you slept?
Absolutely, the chapel's still there.
And I mean, I'm wondering, sleeping in a chapel, I mean, did it have any inspiration on you in terms of religion and crosses and rosary beads?
Completely. I mean, I remember, funnily, and this is good because I remember in the early 2000s, I decided to make skull bracelets but I sort of based it very much on the skull at the base of the crucifix that was on the altar, because a skull, if you're going to do a skull, it's got to be right. Many people attempt to do skulls and they just look tacky or they don't look right. Anyway, so I did a white gold one with diamonds with green eyes, and then I did a black gold one with red eyes. But then what happened, as usual, was then skulls suddenly became all the rage. So they haven't actually made an outing for a very, very long time. And then Alexander started making the scarves, and then Damien did that hair, and then it became everything. So I thought, actually, skulls are so last year, sort of.
So you didn't continue?
No, as soon as everybody else has got it, I sort of go off it.
You moved on.
I've moved on. But yes, I suppose it did. I mean, I'm not particularly religious. I'm a pre-Christian, as it were, more of a kind of Pythagorean in spirit. I worship architecture and golden numbers.
Does that feature in any of your jewellery? Golden numbers would be lovely.
Well, it will do when I start doing my jewellery.
Well, by the end of this podcast, you're going to be complete.
I'll be on to the next thing. But as you say, I suppose everything that's ever happened to me, and it's been quite an eventful life, it has gone into what I do. I mean, I'm very sensitive to my surroundings, so anything that I'm exposed to creeps into my work.
So you went from there. Talk about the opposites in your dress and your life, and these opposites attracting and repelling, probably. You went from that simplicity, that avant-garde life, into marrying a shipping magnate.
Correct.
Which, very young, you must have been just going to grand banquets and dinners every night. And what you wore and what the diamond jewellery that people must have been wearing must have been the exact opposite.
It was different, for sure. It was extremely different. But actually, when I was married, we didn't go out very much. But when we did, I did observe that other people had the most beautiful jewellery. I think I was deemed too young to have jewellery.
Damn.
I know, damn. I wish I'd had more jewellery because I love them. And also I was very busy having my 3 children. But I led a somewhat reclusive life. I didn't really see anybody for those 14 years. But, I think maybe once or twice I went out.
So you've creatively collaborated with artists like David Bowie, David LaChapelle, Alexander McQueen. How did those come about? How do you decide to collaborate?
Well, again, it's was sort of. I remember first meeting you, I think probably in the corridors of Vogue House when I was helping Izzy out. My friend Isabella Blow, in those days when she was really going through it.
At Vogue or Tatler days?
She was at Tatler, but I think
yes.
you were at Vogue.
And she was on Tatler.
When I was helping her out, I didn't have any sort of formal role at Tatler or anything. I was just trying to help a friend. And then she kept on saying to me, oh, you've got to meet because I was buying Alexander McQueen things, and I was buying quite a number of things from Givenchy when he was there. And she said, oh, you must meet him. And I said, well, I really don't want to meet him because, meeting your heroes or meeting someone that you really admire, sometimes it can be such a disappointment sometimes. Anyway, so I was walking across Leicester Square wearing that sort of Givenchy kimono. I was going to some premiere of a film or something, and I suddenly heard a voice saying, oi, you must be Daphne, you're the person that doesn't want to meet me. And I was like, oh my God. So anyway, funnily enough, we just sort of bonded right there. And then I didn't go to the cinema. We just went off to the pub, and the rest is history. So then I sort of became a tremendously good friend of his. And then it was sort of like I was in his studio, or he was in my house, or he would take some of my stuff and he'd take it apart, and I'd take it apart, and he'd sort of send it back to me sort of all in pieces. And I'd say, can you please sew the lining back in that? And then he'd make me something to sort of... He was extremely, extremely, extremely funny and very, very nice and very generous, actually. So he wasn't a disappointment at all. I was hugely embarrassed when he said, oh, I heard you don't want to meet me.
You have said that you use how you dress, fashion and jewellery as armour to sort of protect you in these sort of situations.
For sure. And Alexander knew that very, very well. He wanted to sort of protect me at all costs, Alexander, which was, I'm so grateful for that, because he sort of realised I was a somewhat shy person, but actually, I suppose the illusion became so much bigger because of that, in a way. But it did have the sort of desired effect. It kept people at bay.
And so maybe Contra Mundum, which was this extraordinary diamond-encrusted couture glove that you and Sean Lean, the British jeweller Sean Lean, collaborated on, was that the sort of ultimate example of a defence piece that you wore? It
was, and hence the name. And also, Alexander was pretty involved with that too, and made a change that I wasn't completely on board with, which was we changed the knuckles for some reason. He kind of wanted it a different way. But yes, no, it was Sean, Lee and I in the corner of the V&A Museum at one of those sort of fashion things, all just trying to sort of hide in the corner and not be spoken to. And so I said, let's go and have a look at the armour. And then let's make an armoured glove. And then Sean came over the next day, or a week later, with a sort of bucket to take the cast. It took 5 years to make. And I actually, at the end, after it was only finished after Lee had died. And so there was only one way to present that, which was... when I unveiled it under a pile of veils at Jay
I
Joppling's
was
house.
there.
You were there.
I was there.
Thought of...
Describe the scene.
Oh my God!
But it was a sort of living art performance, wasn't it?
Yes, because you see, Jay said I should be walking around the house, and I thought, no, not a bit of it. So I'd actually been shooting with Nick Knight until the day before, and I'd been shooting on this Perspex box. So I had this brainwave because I was living next. Pretty 4 doors down. I thought, okay, I will install that box in Jay's hall. And I thought, okay, have to get some pillows. So I called up Amanda Harlick and Gareth Pugh. I said, well, you've got to make this look like a sort of bed. I've got a lot of veils and I'm going to just lie on it. And if you could just arrange me under the veils. Because the idea of me walking around Jay's house saying, aren't I so great with my armoured diamond glove? I just thought that would be a bit naff. So the only way forward was really, and also the fact that I was extremely unhappy about, it came just after Lee had died, and it was it was in honour of him. It was in honour of the spirit of what it was made of. But it was very, very last minute. I thought of the way to exhibit that the morning of. I mean, it was just.
I mean, you were like Sleeping Beauty, basically, lying there under this sort of golden gauze and waiting for a prince to come and kiss you, really.
Oh, my goodness. I wish they had.
And that, again, your sort of dedication and commitment not to get up, not to move, while everyone is around you drinking and looking and talking, and you were just sort of in your performance.
Yeah, I was. My father did try. My father was there, and he came up to me, and he sort of leant down, and he said, when are we going for dinner? And I was like, I'm dead, Dad. Please just wait. That was the only thing, because I just didn't want him to break. He said, well, why aren't you going to get up here? I don't think he understood. I think he got it in the end. I think someone told him.
I remember Sean coming into Vogue a lot over the years. Carol, we've got this, we've got that, we've done the cast, we've got to do the cast again. You had like 21 fittings, 5,000 diamonds, 4 years. I mean, it was quite a thing. And it was also chainmail, each knuckle fitted, the fingertips. Didn't you change the fingers at some point?
Yes, we changed the fingers, but also the knuckles were changed by Alexander, and then they didn't quite fit me because he wanted a straight line rather than it being sort of rounded. But it did fit, and I shot it a lot. And in the end, the best part of the story, but it was actually sort of it was the funniest thing. Sean came over because you remember he did a sale of the jewellery, and he said,
in 2017, wasn't it, at Sotheby's?
He came to my house. He said, I've got a proposition for you. And I said, oh, well, funnily enough, I've got a proposition for you, because I've got a really good idea. What I want to do is I want to melt the glove down, take all the diamonds out and melt it down on film and transform it into something else. And poor Sean, he went white. I mean, he went completely white. He said, I'm not really sure about that, but I've got a better proposition. Do you want to sell it in my sale? So I thought that it was, he was trying to come to terms with all of the things that he had been doing with Alexander, and so he had this big sale. And I thought, well, actually, I don't want to break his heart. But I love the idea of transforming matter, and the idea of sort of making a whole new glove with a different design, and also sort of doing it in a sort of Buñuel type of way, sort of.
Imagining Sean watching 5 years of blood, sweat and tears.
I know, but there's nothing so romantic as kind of just reforming it into something else. It's the end of the circle, but that didn't happen. But it was quite a funny moment. Didn't
Lady Gaga buy it? Yes, so she has it now.
She did. I mean, because by that stage, I think they'd used. Actually, they'd done American Horror Story, and there was a sort of, I think someone had made a sort of a kind of vague copy of it, and it's ended up in the right hands, because I mean there's no one better really to
appreciate
own that glove. Yes, exactly. Another artist, and
have you ever seen her wear it?
Well, yes, I have actually.
Would it fit? Does it fit her arm?
It does. It does fit her arm, because we did a shoot together for V magazine, and she wore it, and it looked looked fantastic on her. But I think I will do something else similar. Now I've finished a record, there's many things I could do.
And I just wanted to talk about the birds, because it had a lot of black diamond and white diamond birds along the chainmail, didn't it?
Yes.
What was the significance of those?
That was very much a Lee signature idea. I mean, I think it's sort of lost in the romance and the mystery of the making of the glove. But it's the idea of freedom and lightness and being able to fly away, but also being encrusted, sort of the fleeing of this world, but yet being protected against it.
The sort of light and dark maybe as well, with the black and the white.
That's correct. It's such an interesting story, the story of the glove. I mean, I wish we'd sort of written the whole process down, because it was really something, as you say.
I was really frustrated because, you know, in the time that he was doing it, I kept sort of earmarking stories in Vogue, because obviously I wanted the exclusive of it. And then it got delayed, and then we lost some pages that were, and in the end it went into Harper's. I was absolutely furious at the time.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
I think it landed up because of the timing of
it. Yes. I think Sean took care of that. I'm always so busy trying to sort of imagine things that I'm not tremendously good at the sort of launch of anything.
But it really was a staggering.
It was staggering.
Staggering jewel. Piece of sculptured jewellery that, I mean, no one has attempted to make for generations, simply generations.
That's correct. Oh my goodness.
You know, it's up there with the sort of Romanov crown or something like that. Oh my God,
thank you.
I really think it's really extraordinary.
Well, we put all of our sort of love and attention into it, and obviously, of course, Sean the most of all, because he had to make it. And some of the diamonds in that, as I think I said before, some of the diamonds in the glove were things that I'd had taken out of other things, and I put them in. Sort of, there are little stories to some of the diamonds in that glove, and sort of special prayers and stuff that I put in.
And you made cuffs, didn't you? Mould cuffs of your hand for some other cuffs, more simple cuffs.
Yes, I've done that. Those I've got. They're actually beautiful. 2 cuffs. One is Scorpio and one is Scorpio missing. So it's a very plain gold cuff, very smooth. It's a seamless closure. One's just diamonds, some set in and some set upside down. So they kind of, some of them stick out and some of them don't, but they're all sort of sprinkled on one hand. And then the other one is just sort of gold with Scorpio, the star system. So, and the other one just has it. That part of it is not there. It's kind of a blank. But anyway, if I had more time and the money to do it, there are many, many things that I'd enjoy doing jewellery-wise.
And do you look at jewellers you admire to maybe, like you sort of really took a role of being a mentor, really, with...
No, I wish.
With Sean.
Sean, yes.
To create that glove. Anyone else that you want to work with at the moment?
I don't really know who's around. I've been a musician for now. I mean, you know, that really took over my life. And when I went to live in the middle of Ireland, I sort of cut myself off from the world completely. I mean, even my cell phone didn't really work there. So, I mean, I cut off, and you know, as ever with everything I do, things start out as one thing, and then they sort of build up, and then of course you have to come back in order to release something or to sort of show your face and complete them. So, you know, I thought, I'm out. I'm never going to see anybody again. I'm going to be living in the middle of the wilderness, roaming the hills, and that's it. You know, I was very, very burnt out after sort of some rather unfortunate things in New York, but also the FIT installation took 2 years of my life, and it was, you know, it was a very, very, very intense for me, because, you know, I dressed every single mannequin and accessorized them, and up until 10 minutes before it opened I was adding ribbons or brooches or whatever. Valerie Steele, the dean of FIT, I said, well, yeah, I've put some real brooches on. She said, no, you can't put any real brooches on. We don't have the insurance. I said, well, just maybe one or two. Anyway, in the end, I sort of managed to sort of source. This is why I know, New York is not good for paste jewellery. It was really difficult to find stuff that actually I could, that felt enough like me. I mean, some of my paste was on it, but I did need sort of other ones in substitution for the real ones that I couldn't put on there.
Do you have an urge to make some more jewellery?
I do.
And design some more?
I really do, but I wouldn't know. Coming out of this this is my fourth record back to back. I don't really know what the landscape looks like, but I hate to sort of be controversial, but when I do sort of glimpse how these stones are set when I take a sort of turn round the Place Vendôme or down Bond Street, you think, what a waste of a good stone. You have to make something so beautiful out of that. But alas, I have no connections with anybody who's in that business at the present day.
So you want some lovely stones to work with?
Yes, absolutely. I have lots of designs in my head and but I'm sure something will happen. And I've made lots of different these sort of long scarves with sort of paste jewellery things, which is I have many sort of prototypes which I've been working on slowly as sketches for the future. And if it happens that I can actually make it into a real thing, then I will. But if time or money doesn't permit, then obviously I can't.
And what do you think jewellery should express when you're making it? What's in your head that you think it should? Should it be purely decorative? Should it mean something?
I think you could try and get everything into. I mean, you could. It should definitely be decorative. First of all, practicality. It needs to be. It needs not to fall off. And it needs to be set in a proper setting so that the stones don't fall out or don't move. And it needs to be easy to put on. I mean, my favourite period probably of jewellery is the 20s and 30s, especially Cartier. I love older jewellery, but sometimes that can be they can be somewhat fragile because they fall apart. But the way that things were set in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, that's really when it was good. And I've got different feelings about different metals as well, for example, and the different hues. It's such a fascinating subject, but I think it should mean something. Jewels of today seem so soulless. They feel sort of, I don't know, they don't feel like there's a hand or I don't know if it's the cut, I don't know if it's the way they're displayed. They could just look a lot better. But that's just me being being a perfectionist, I suppose. And also fashions change. And I suppose the big markets, that's what they require.
Well, we'll wait to see the golden numbers, maybe.
I hope so. Oh, Carol, I hope so.
Do you have, like we were in the paper this morning, you'd been to Mick Jagger's 80th birthday. Is there something special you wear for a night like that?
Oh, goodness gracious. I was trying to think what I was going to wear, and in the end, because it was raining, I sort of decided that I would make sure that I wore something which was somewhat waterproof in case I got stuck in the rain, and somewhat sparkly. So I did get dressed pretty fast, but it's again intuitive. But there was a dress code, so I attempted. Yeah, I get dressed rather fast.
And the dress code was not wet weather. I don't believe.
No, it wasn't. But I mean, it wasn't.
Was...
No, but that's nothing to do with it was summer.
And did you wear any jewellery?
I did. Yeah. I wore my rings and my earrings and some bracelets.
Because he likes jewellery, doesn't he?
He loves jewellery.
Which I have to say is where you were wearing the diamond brooch with the swimsuit, was at his house. And he obviously appreciates jewellery.
He's got very good taste in jewellery. Yeah, well, in everything, in fact.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about jewellery with us, because...
Oh, my goodness. I do think jewellery is important. I mean, it's obviously, it's such an ancient form of art, and it's a very important form of art. It's back to the ancient Egyptians and even beyond. It's endlessly fascinating.
Thank you, Daphne. And we look forward to the album.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
And everyone should have a look at Is the film online yet?
Yes, it is.
Nick Knight's Film on Show Studio.
Yes,
have a look at the film, and we get a taster of Daphne's style. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes of If Jewels Could Talk, please go to our website, carolwoolton.com/podcasts, and do share it any way you can. And we love to have a rating and a comment, so thank you. For more information on our sponsors, that's fullygemstones.com. Please join me again in 2 weeks for the next Jeweled Nugget. A couple of weeks ago, we explored the life of the French fashion designer Coco Chanel and her experiences during the time of the war in Paris. Now, what Chanel was at the time to the fashion world, the jeweler we will be talking about was to jewellery. We will be exploring the fictional life of one of the legendary designers. So join me again, and thank you for listening. Goodbye. If Jewels Could Talk with Carol Woolton is produced by Natasha Cowan, music and editing by Tim Thornton, graphics by Scott Bentley, illustration by Jordi Labanda. You can find our sponsors at fullygemstones.com and me at carolwoolton.com.